Before diving into today's topic, I would first like to thank Baseus for sending over this nifty little power bank, and also for sponsoring this video. What we've got here is the Baseus Blade HD laptop power bank with 100 watts at 20,000 milliamps per hour. This is a high density version of the Blade power bank. It's 10% lighter and 70% smaller than the prior version, with a slim profile of just 0.7 inches. It easily fits into any bag, while also simultaneously supporting charging for up to 4 different devices. I've personally been using this to charge both my phone and my Switch at the very same time, and it's worked pretty darn well. For the Nintendo Switch specifically, you can charge it all the way back up 4 separate times before having to recharge the power bank itself. And on the note of the power bank, it's pretty easy to charge. You just plug it into a power source and it charges up after a little bit. You have 100 watt power delivery and 2-way fast charging. There are 4 different ports you can use, 2 of which are USB-A and the other 2 are USB-C. You just plug it into your device and it charges, and quickly too. It works pretty darn well and it's easy to take around. Something else kind of nice I noted about this power bank is that it doesn't get hot. I was holding it for a while I was charging both my phone and my Switch, and it works just fine with not really any significant heat there, so it's pretty comfortable. Something else about this power bank that sets itself apart from other power banks is that it has a little screen, and when you tap the little power button, it will flash quickly to show you how much of a charge it has left, but when it's plugged in, it actually does show you more advanced statistics on what's going on, how much energy you have left, and how long it's taking. So it's definitely something else I really appreciate about this little box, and to be totally honest, I see myself using this for a long time to come. It's pretty darn useful. So if this is something that you may find useful, check the link in the description below and use this code BLADE20 for a 38% discount off this power bank. Again, I would like to thank Baseus for sending over this power bank and sponsoring today's video. Welcome everyone, this is Andre's Restart, and today we're talking about how it's now become more painfully clear than ever that the Nintendo Switch 2 reveal is coming fairly soon, especially after what we saw yesterday with the September Nintendo Direct of 2023. But it's not just what we saw in the Direct, it's a lot of what we saw in the Direct I feel strongly implying the end of the Switch generation and this preparation of a transition to Switch 2, but also things we've heard over the last couple weeks from different reports and credible leakers, and also some interesting things Nintendo has been doing this year that I think strongly suggest something is happening very, very soon, and that's what we're focusing on this time. Before diving into it all though, let me point out that we are aiming to hit 50,000 subscribers by the end of the year, so if you do enjoy my content, please subscribe and hit the notification bell. With your help, it can happen. So before we get into all the other additional details I mentioned, let's focus on this Nintendo Direct that happened yesterday. So there's been a lot of discussion on this Nintendo Direct and the quality of it, and during the live stream yesterday, we definitely debated about it for some time. Was it good? Was it bad? Was it mid? And ultimately I decided to give the Direct a C grade, although I think grading in general can be a bit arbitrary. But I think I personally go with that grade just because the Direct didn't do much for me personally, and there was a lack of variety. Even though Nintendo did a good job of having consistent announcements that didn't take too long, I felt like the Direct had a pretty good pace. And Nintendo also did a good job of outlining what's to come in the first quarter of 2024. But what I think stuck out the most to a lot of people watching was that it was mostly just Mario announcements, and not only was it just mostly Mario stuff, but there was no new Nintendo game announced for 2024. And when I say new, I mean an actual brand new game. I don't mean DLC, I don't mean a remaster or remake, I mean a brand new game. Currently, the only brand new Nintendo game that we have coming next year is the Peach Showtime game that's coming out next March. Another code is a remaster collection that's coming out in January. It is being published by Nintendo. It's a nice little thing that they're doing there. And then in February, we're getting a remake of a Game Boy Advance game, Mario vs. Donkey Kong. And then we're getting an HDification of Luigi's Mansion 2, which is coming out some point summer next year. And then for the big final reveal, It was Paper Mario: The Thousand-Year Door. This is something we've talked about over the last few months, being a likely candidate to come to Nintendo Switch, and it's coming, and it looks amazing. But it's another Mario Universe game. If you think about what we're getting this holiday, Mario Wonder, WarioWare, Super Mario RPG, that's 3 of the 4 games coming out in October and November. That's Nintendo's holiday lineup. And then in February, it's Mario vs. Donkey Kong, then the Peach game, then Luigi, then Paper Mario Thousand-Year Door. And the only other non-Nintendo games that are coming out in 2024 is Another Code, which is a remaster Nintendo's helping to publish, but it's not internally developed. And then that's it for 2024 at least. What do you think this is all suggesting is Nintendo's being very strategic about maximizing software sales. They're putting out a lot of Mario Universe games that are going to pop off more so than usual thanks to the boosted popularity by the Mario Bros. Movie, and they're going in on that. But on top of that, a lot of these entries are relatively low budget efforts. And whenever I bring this up, I think someone in the comments, there's always a few people that get upset by me saying this. I am not saying low budget efforts as a way to insult the quality of what we're getting, but rather it's to point out the strategic moves that Nintendo is making. They are saving some of their larger budget efforts for Nintendo Switch 2. That's what's being made clear here, and they're relying on other projects that don't take as much time, that don't require as much of a development team, like Paper Mario Thousand-Year Door, because it's a game that already exists. They're simply enhancing it as a remake. Mario vs. Donkey Kong, they're enhancing it as a remake or remaster. Same thing with Luigi's Mansion, same thing with Another Code, same thing with Super Mario RPG. The majority of Nintendo's games that are coming out around this time are remakes and remasters. And this situation strongly reminds me of the last 3 years of Nintendo 3DS. If you look at the last 3 years of Nintendo 3DS, it was mostly remakes and remasters and Pokemon. That was it. And the reason this was done is because Nintendo is preparing to switch over to the Nintendo Switch generation, while still wanting to put out games that people would enjoy on the 3DS even a couple years into the Switch generation. And I believe that's the exact same plan Nintendo has for the Switch. You look at this year, it feels very much like a 2016 year for 3DS. I think it's ultimately better because the Switch has more of a focused effort, and Nintendo definitely is doing a great job, but fact of the matter is, they are saving their resources here. I think that's why we didn't get the announcement of the F-Zero GX remaster that we've been hearing about, but instead, we see F-Zero 99. Of course, it's possible that the GX remaster rumor is wrong, but then there's also the long-rumored Donkey Kong game. That's definitely not the Mario vs. Donkey Kong. That is a separate thing. And I think that's also why Metroid Prime 4 wasn't shown off. Yesterday, I made a dedicated video talking about how I think it's more clear than ever that Prime 4 is being saved as a cross-gen title. It's become very clear Nintendo's saving a lot of their bigger projects for another system that can showcase them in a better light. That doesn't mean that some of these games won't still come to Switch, but they're waiting to showcase them alongside the Switch 2. But something else about the Direct that I think is worthy of note is that if you look at the titles for all the major Nintendo Directs this year, the February Direct, the June Direct, and the September Direct, what you'll notice is that they say Nintendo Direct, they say the date, and they have a dash, and then it says Nintendo Switch, which may not be too weird at face value because, of course, there's a Direct about Nintendo Switch games. But if you look at the Nintendo Directs from prior years, they don't have Nintendo Switch. There is no dash Nintendo Switch. It's just Nintendo Direct and the date. And for the last handful of years, it's just been Switch. So I think it's a very interesting choice that going into 2023, Nintendo changed how they title their Nintendo Directs. It does feel like a strong implication that there could conceivably be a Direct that has a different name at the very end. Which brings me to some other information I want to discuss that's come out recently surrounding this Direct. So before the Direct happened, we were talking about these reports from Eurogamer Video Games Chronicle about these tech demos at Gamescom. And even before we finally got word of these tech demos of Switch 2 at Gamescom, there was a lot of talk that maybe Switch 2 could be revealed soon. I personally didn't buy too much into that. If anything, I think it may have been a misinterpretation of what was going to happen at Gamescom, which were these tech demos. But something that came from Gamescom, a few things. One is this report from Eurogamer of the tech demos, but there's something that they say that I find to be very, very interesting. A recent report pinned Switch 2's arrival for the latter part of next year, with development kits now in the hands of some key partners. This chimed with what Eurogamer also had previously heard, though on timing, I understand Nintendo is keen to launch the system sooner if possible. That last part, Nintendo is keen to launch the system sooner if possible. So that almost seems to be strongly implying that, if possible, Nintendo would much prefer to launch the Switch 2 before the second half of 2024. And what makes this even more interesting is that recently from a Nate the Hate podcast that will be linked in the description below talking about the tech demos from Gamescom of Switch 2, it was also discussed that the March timing was a big deal in discussions at Gamescom regarding Switch 2. Now, there hasn't been much clarity on what the March timing means. It's unclear if this means reveal time, release time, or something significant for the Switch 2 around that time. But the point is that something significant for Switch 2 is happening in March. When we factor that yes, even though we see strong software sales, hardware sales have been trending down year by year for the last 3 years. And historically speaking, this would mean that Nintendo, Sony, or Microsoft would introduce a new console by this point. And that sometime the second half of 2024, the Switch would become the oldest running system before upgrading a new one, if that's what happens. It is very likely that Switch 2 is getting revealed really soon. If we're hearing about tech demos and development kits, it's coming very, very soon. At the very latest, the second half of 2024. But this March timing to me, I think, means that really at the very latest, we're going to see Switch 2 in March. I think that's the very latest. So I'm not on the train that Switch 2 comes out this next March. I don't think that's what the March discussion at Gamescom suggests. Nintendo's putting out the Peach game in March. We have Mario vs. Donkey Kong in February. I think Nintendo is going to space out their releases. So I just am skeptical that they're going to shove in a Switch 2 launch with 3D Mario. That just seems unlikely to me. Especially when we have all this other Mario goodness going on. I think things would be spaced out a bit more. But a big Nintendo Switch 2 reveal event or a big Nintendo Switch 2 Direct in March, very conceivable to me. And really, after watching the Direct and seeing the kind of content Nintendo has to offer, I almost feel like Nintendo could definitely get away with showing the system off sooner. Could it be possible that we could get some sort of Nintendo Switch 2 initial teaser at the Game Awards this December? It wouldn't be the first time we've seen a major console be teased at the Game Awards, and Nintendo has had a history of having some big announcements at the Game Awards, although in recent times it's definitely been a little bit lesser. But with Tears of the Kingdom likely being at least a Game of the Year candidate and having a great chance at winning Game of the Year, and Mario Wonder also almost being a shoo-in for perhaps Best Family Game of the Year, Nintendo may be willing to have some sort of announcement of Switch 2, especially because if they're going to have this big launch in 2024, that's when it makes the most sense to put your marketing at the Game Awards. We saw a lot more of a Nintendo presence at the Game Awards in the early parts of the Switch generation and leading up to Switch generation because they wanted to really build up their marketing for their next big new system. The same could happen this time around as well. Now, I know some people will argue that announcing the Nintendo Switch 2 in 2023 doesn't make sense because you will ruin holiday sales. I think there is truth to that to some extent, but when you factor in that hardware sales have already been dipping quite a bit and it's mostly just strong software sales, and the kind of games that we're getting this holiday aren't the kind of games that you would necessarily think you would need a more powerful system to play and enjoy. If the tease were to happen in December, that would already be past Black Friday in November and the first week of December, where a lot of holiday sales would have already have taken place. So I'm not sure Nintendo would be against teasing their system. After all, it's not like other companies haven't done that before already. Microsoft. Now, before we close out, there is one more shocking discovery that has happened from the Nintendo Direct that I believe is another strong sign of something happening very soon. So, credit to Jake from Game Explain for pointing this out. There's a video that he already made. I'll be linking that in the description below. But basically, what was discovered during the Nintendo Direct, you'll notice that Super Mario RPG, for the button commands, the colors are in the same way as the Super Famicom, which is A for red, yellow for B, green for Y, blue for X. And given that this is a remake of a Super Nintendo game, this shouldn't come as too much of a shock. Now granted, the localized version had different colors, but this gets very interesting when we also take a look at the colors for the button commands in Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door. They use the color red for A, which wasn't like that on the GameCube. And Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door is just coming out at some point in 2024, and I will add, it looks amazing. I think they definitely showed Switch gameplay, but man, that game would look even better in 4K. Point is, this could be a subtle hint to the different style of colored buttons we may have on the Nintendo Switch 2, or maybe the Super Switch. It's a theory, but it's one that I think holds up pretty well and could be another hint of things to come really soon. So I think it's pretty clear a Nintendo Switch 2 reveal is coming soon. What does soon mean exactly? I would say at the very latest this March, but potentially even sooner. If Nintendo wants to somehow release their system before the second half of 2024, they will have to make an announcement soon. I'm skeptical that that'll actually happen, but it's clear that things are going on right now, and news is fairly imminent. But what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. This is Andre's Restart. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and I'll see you all really soon. Take care. Bye.